Bleach Thousand Year Blood War episode 28 might just be the most groundbreaking episode we've gotten in Bleach so far, and that's saying something. This is no hyperbole. The contents of this episode and the implications it possesses are astronomical. If you're looking for a guide to make sense of all of this, then you've come to the right place. This will be a comprehensive deep dive analysis of Bleach Thousand Year Blood War episode 28. First, I'll talk about what happened in the episode, and then the character implications, and finally the story/lore implications. Episode 28 starts off with a terrifying visual of what can only be the Soul King's almighty eyes. Taguchi's on the storyboard, and so there's your obligatory disco lighting somewhere. This time it's in the eyes of the Reo. You see a Tensou Zangetsu Yhwach floating in what we have come to learn is called the Primordial Sea, and he's watching the Reo perform what is called the Triplet World. This is the moment where he separated the worlds. Time then jumps forward, and now it's a slightly older Yhwach still watching. The Reo is holding a metal anchor and 3 whirlpools surround him. I'll let you guys see for yourself, but I feel like Yhwach was in one of those whirlpools. At least it's heavily implied. Time then jumps forward to Yhwach's visage from 1,000 years ago, the old man Zangetsu form. The waves then pick up and Yhwach is pulled beneath the depths, and he starts to de-age until he's an infant. We then see the Soul King's dismemberment happen as Yhwach in his current form stands in front of the Reo. There's a shot of young Yhwach crying as he witnesses what's happening, but I'd argue that Yhwach is actually crying because of what he calls the screams within his heart, the burden he carries because he's taken on the souls of each person who's bestowed power to him as a baby, the cries of the Forsaken. But then we see a shot of the Reo, and then it's depicted as if he's inside Ichigo's head, and Yhwach is staring down at Ichigo, something that's going to be referenced later on in the episode. Ichigo in real time seemingly felt or saw something. It's not focused on at all, so they arrive at the Inner Holy Shrine to see Yhwach standing before the Soul King. The world starts shaking, and we see Ryukin Ishida seated in his office with fragments of what I can only surmise is still silver in his hand. The slow foreshadowing of the final battle continues. Yhwach places his hand on the crystal and tells the Reo that he will put an end to his humiliation before Ichigo and the others show up. Now, it's important to notice that the scene that just transpired with Yhwach and the Reo happened already, because by the time Ichigo and the others arrive, not only is the room not red due to the stabbing, the curtains covering the Reo are down, and so Yhwach did this already. We were just seeing it in the present, and he placed the curtains back over the Reo when he confronts Ichigo. They exchange very quick remarks when Ichigo draws his blade and challenges Yhwach to another battle. Their clash destroys a segment of the inner shrine as they begin their fight in the skies. Yhwach elects to turn off his almighty and fight Ichigo with the same skill level he used against Ichibe Hyosube. Ichigo dashes next to Yhwach and unleashed a point-blank Getsuga Tensho, which knocks Yhwach back. Yhwach tries to poke Ichigo in the eye, which is a callback from their first battle where Ichigo tried to poke him in the eye. Ichigo parries before clashing with him, and the two land in Kirinji's palace. Ichigo tries to stab Yhwach, but Yhwach blocks him with a blute concentrated in his palms before launching a zonked bogen at Ichigo, who defends with his Getsuga Tensho. They clash again in what is an extremely well animated sequence, and as they fight, Yhwach says a line that is a direct callback to Old Man Zangetsu's training with Ichigo. "If you fear, the only future left for you is death." That's a callback to Old Man Zangetsu's words to Ichigo. "Be afraid, and you'll die." Yhwach continues his onslaught with a Qual Christ attack, surrounding Ichigo with massive bows of reishi that fire arrows at him. Ichigo deflects them all before firing a Getsuga Jujutsu at Yhwach, who defends with the Sankt Zwinga, the ultimate Quincy defense. Ichigo's Jujutsu attacks burst through the Sankt Zwinger and knocks Yhwach back onto the platform. As Ichigo stands in the wake of his attack, he declares their battle over. Yhwach commends Ichigo on his newfound power, citing the Irazusondo trial and Ichigo coming to possess its everlasting memories and revelations. Yhwach then activates his almighty and their battle resumes, but this time, Ichigo cannot keep up. Yhwach knocks Ichigo back into the Inner Holy Shrine and he's down for the count. He then talks to Ichigo about the eternal world that existed and the darkness that threatened it. Ichigo witnessed the power of the Soul King who repelled the darkness, but even he was unable to outrun being used as a way to stabilize the very world he had a hand in creating. As Yhwach speaks, you see the inscribing on the walls of the Inner Holy Shrine. I've been told that these inscriptions reference the incantation Yhwach used when he activated the Ashvalen. Yhwach continues by explaining that the Soul King could see everything in the three worlds and could even see 1,000 years into the future. He witnessed the events that would see the tragedy that befall the Quincy. The Soul King Adyneus saw it all. And I'll stop here to make it clear. We've got the official name of the Soul King. His name is Adyneus, and he was referenced in Yhwach's Australian chant. According to Yhwach, Adyneus saw that Quincies would be hunted to extinction and still chose to abandon them. The Quincy faced near extinction twice because they did not fit into the system of this new world, and it would seem that the Soul King himself agreed with this. That is what put Yhwach on this path. He chose to kill his father and create a new world, one where Quincies can be accepted. Ichigo gets up once again and bears his fang at Yhwach, who remains unperturbed. As Ichigo screams that he will protect all the worlds from Yhwach, Yhwach retorts that Ichigo's Quincy blood will not forgive the Soul King. Ichigo ignores his warning and charges to him as Orihime heals his wounds. As he clashes with Yhwach once again, Ichibe can be seen speaking to himself, lamenting that they cannot defeat Yhwach Baha. But not to worry, that is what peace is all about. Ichibe's morality continues to be grayed extensively. As Ichigo and Yhwach clash, Yoruichi manages to set a trap for him. Tenshi Heiso Hisakikumoi. That's a name we did not get in the manga. Impressive showing from Yoruichi, but it does not work and Yhwach burns it off. When he does so, some of the flames touch the curtain and burn away, revealing the Soul King with Yhwach's blade running through his chest. The others think that the Soul King is dead, but Yoruichi confirms that he's not. Ichigo springs into action and grabs hold of Yhwach's sword, trying to pull it out. As he does so, Yhwach beckons him to carry on. He challenges him to pull out the sword, and after Ichigo does, blute markings appear on his right arm as Yhwach looks on devilishly. He watches as Ichigo, with his own hands, strikes down the Soul King and severs him in two. Yhwach gave Ichigo some of his spiritual pressure, and that power called out to Ichigo's Quincy blood, pleading and forcing Ichigo to strike down Adyneus. Yhwach then goes ahead to drop an absolute bombshell. He was able to stab the Soul King, but in order to sever the connection Adyneus had to the entire world, he needed a being who was a Shinigami, Quincy, Fullbringer, Hollow, and human. Ichigo gaining his Shinigami powers and making his way here was all for the purposes of destroying the Soul King, just as Yhwach foresaw with his eyes. He then asks Ichigo to watch with him as the destruction of the Soul Society unfolds, and that is where the episode ends. Now I have toiled and toiled, thought and pondered over and over trying to establish a perspective on Yhwach's character, especially now with the flashbacks. So I'll prelude all of this by saying that if my ideas turn out to be wrong, I'm terribly sorry, but this is what I think is happening specifically with Yhwach. When Yhwach says that the Soul King is his father, do you take it literally or figuratively? If you take it figuratively, I don't even blame you. For Yhwach to have been Adyneus' literal son, he would have needed to exist during the primordial era of Bleach, before the creation of the worlds. But as crazy as that sounds, I think that's exactly what's being implied here. Yhwach is the actual son of Adyneus, and I do think that Yhwach, or whatever he was called back then, existed during the primordial era of Bleach. Him being the actual son of Adyneus explains why he inherited Adyneus' eyes, even if it's not a full version of it. But if this point is true, it begs another question. Why is Yhwach called the father of Quincy's if he has a father? Whoever the father is of the one called the father of Quincy should be the actual father of Quincy, should he not? The only reason that makes sense to me on this point is that Quincy's as we knew it did not exist back then, not in the same sense as we see them now. Adyneus probably had something in him that would trigger Quincy's being created eventually, but I don't believe outright Quincy's existed back then. Yhwach was the first, and I think it'll make sense as I continue to explain my point here. When you look at Adyneus in the primordial sea, you witness 3 whirlpools around him. Now, this is up to you to believe me or not, but I think Yhwach is in one of those whirlpools, and once the triplet whirl technique is triggered, Yhwach is pulled into the depths and he starts aging backwards before becoming a baby being born into the world. I've come to believe that the visual we see here is Yhwach being sent into this cycle of rebirth and the reincarnation of souls. During the primordial era, death and life were mixed. There was no death, and so there was no cycle of rebirth and recycling of souls. Adyneus' actions here are the literal origin of the concept of life and death, and Yhwach was one of the first instances of that. He gets sent into the flow of life and death, and he's born into the human world as a baby who cannot see, speak, move, or hear. That's the contents in the Godlike You chapter of Bleach. And so now that he's born, we get the whole taking of souls into himself and bestowing powers onto others before taking it back when they die, etc. This is the birth of the Quincy. Now from there, Yhwach grows up, attains an army called the Licht Empire and starts waging war killing Hollows. Ichigo and the powers that be became worried because the Quincy are killing Hollows and upsetting the balance, and so he goes in to hold peace talks with Yhwach. Yhwach uses the Almighty he's inherited and Ichigo proceeds to seal it in exchange for Pernita. There is a very interesting perspective to this scene though. Yhwach does not seem to fully know the truth of what happened at that primordial sea. Ichigo showing him the flashes of information is what gave him that knowledge. There's only two possible reasons for this. One is that Yhwach lost some of his memories and did not remember, or two, he didn't lose his memories, he just didn't understand what was happening back then until Ichigo gave him some much needed context. In any case, the knowledge that Yhwach accumulated led him to the formation of his mission statement. Yhwach intends to kill his father and create a new world, and with that point, I want to explore the relationship between Yhwach and his father Adyneus, because the relationship is very layered. On one level, Yhwach feels very sad for Adyneus because of what he believes is humiliation that was brought upon his father. Yhwach's perspective on Adyneus' current state is one of pity, and he wishes to free him from that humiliation. But on the other hand, and on another layer, Yhwach outright hates the Reo, because the Reo abandoned him and others like him. And so what he does is for vengeance, but it is also to free his father from the clutches of the Shinigami. Daddy issues. Go figure. And so, in order to create a place in the world for Quincy's to exist freely and proudly, Yhwach intends to create a new world, one different from this now existing Soul Reaper Soul system. This has given Yhwach so many layers of characterization that I believe he's the biggest beneficiary of Bleach 1000 Year Blood Wars anime. Utter greatness. But let's move on. Okay, so the Reo, the Soul King, called Adyneus. We learned quite a bit about him in this episode, and it creates even more questions about other events, so let me try to make sense of this. The episode and the mid-episode texts talk about something called the Primordial Sea. I've been calling the time period before the separation of worlds the Primordial Era. Back then, as we know, life and death were mixed together and the universe was in a state of chaos. I've made videos on this, so this isn't new. It's heavily implied that there was a desire back then to fight back against the chaotic world they lived in. There was a move to create a new world, but in order to do this, they needed power. Some serious power. And that's where Adyneus comes in. Using the power of the Almighty, he has to separate the world of the Soul Society, Human World, and Hueco from the Primordial Sea, and I believe the technique is called the Triplet World Technique. But here's the kicker. Adyneus had the Almighty, and he was deadly with the ability. The Almighty's power is characterized by the number of eyes the user possesses. Yhwach right now went from 1 to 2 to 3. Adyneus had 4. We're not sure what the abilities of the 4 have, but I believe the 4th allows the user to gain control over the past, but that's for another video. Point is, Adyneus with the Almighty could see 1,000 years into the future, and he had a choice to make that would shape history forever. Peering into the future, he witnessed the war against the Quincy and how they would be hunted to near extinction twice. He who had a part of him that would later become Quincy had a decision to make. On the other hand, using his Almighty, he knew that the noble houses of the Shinigami would betray him and condemn him to an eternity of hopelessness, acting as the linchpin that holds the entire world together. The desecration that will not be named. The original sin. That was the second choice he had. Should he stand with the Shinigami and create a new world from the primordial one, even though it would mean that he is betrayed and dismembered by them? Or does he stand with the Quincy, whose existence would ultimately threaten the balance? Would he stand with the Quincy's who would be brutally killed by the Shinigami and hunted to near extinction twice? Well, Adyneus chose to forsake the Quincy, and he stood with the Shinigami, triggering the triplet world, kickstarting the cycle of souls, and separating the worlds as well as life and death. Why would he do that? What reasons did he have to do this? Well, let's break it down. We don't know the morality of Adyneus. We don't know what kind of man he was. Was he comfortable wielding his power like Yhwach is, for war and conquest? Did he believe in changing the future just because, or did he believe in some kind of order to the world? The Almighty doesn't merely give you the power to see the future, it allows you to change it. And so, if he wanted to, he could have prevented the original sin. He knew they would do it, but he led himself like a lamb to the slaughter and became their sacrifice. My belief is that Adyneus must have had some kind of code, some measure of honor. He would not simply interfere with the future. No, he believed that the better option was the Soul Reaper's artificial Soul Reaper Shinigami system. He knew it would be flawed, he knew that the folly of greed and selfishness would cause a lot of pain, but he truly trusted that that would be the better option over remaining in the primordial era, And so, knowing that there was no other way than to give himself up as a sacrifice, he did so willingly. But he knew that one day, Soul Society would have a chance to change. He knew that after millennia, one man would emerge with the potential to change Soul Society and fix the wrongs of the Soul Reaper's unfair system. He would cast his faith in that one man to finish what he started. And what a piece of irony it is that Ichigo was the one to strike down and finish the job, killing Adyneus. Perhaps all along, the one he was waiting for, the one to give him release and give him reprieve, was Ichigo himself, the long descendant of one of the 5 houses that turned on him from the beginning. Ironic indeed. Okay, so that's the character component. Finally, let's talk about the story component. I've said this in multiple videos, but I'll say it again because if you're a Bleach fan who doesn't understand this, you won't get why what's happening is so crazy. The world of Bleach as you know it is not natural. The world as we found it when we entered it is artificial. That is to say, it is a construct of people. It is not some supernatural otherworldly concoction. There was the primordial world before, the primordial sea as they call it. Adyneus and the nobles decided to create something from that original world. That world before all of this started, that is the natural world. What we have is the artificial world. Whether things were good or bad back then is beside the point. The primordial world is the Bleach world in its truest sense. The nobles and Adyneus created a world from that madness, and with it came rules. Rules that placed the Shinigami at the top as balancers. Regulations that placed Hollows and Wakamundo in a system that had humans in the human world. I call this the Soul Reaper Soul System. In this system, life and death exist and coexist in this reincarnation cycle that keeps the laws of conservation of energy tried and true. Now, this system is very pro Soul Reaper and it's very anti-Quincy. This system relies on the concept of recycling. Humans who die go to Soul Society, and Soul Society souls eventually reincarnate into the world, and Hollows who undergo a cleansing gets recycled into the great flow of souls. Quincy's do not have a place in this system. The Quincy's cannot coexist with Hollows, and they have no desire to do so. They cannot hollowify, and they cease to exist when killed by Hollows. And so they want to kill Hollows and don't know any other way but to live that way. This complicates the Soul Reaper Soul System, and so they've tried on 2 separate occasions to wipe out the Quincy. Yhwach here is trying to create yet another system that allows the Quincy's to live fully and freely, even if that means destroying the current system that exists. And so hopefully that clears that up. But, as you can see in Bleach, right and wrong are so skewed that it's hard to see who the good guys are. The Soul Reaper system works, but it's extremely crooked and broken, and it's led to the literal extinction of an entire race of people. Not to mention how badly they treat normal souls and how unfair their rules and laws are. As a result of this decrepit system, people like Aizen and Yhwach emerge. Aizen intended to take down the Soul King and rule as the new king, while Yhwach wishes to kill him and destroy this world altogether. Ichigo is the leader of the Shinigami, but he's crooked as hell. Keisuke Urahara is definitely a good guy, but man, is his moral compass skewed as well. The whole situation is just messed up, and that's what Kubo wanted to do. And so overall, this episode was great in multiple ways. It's blown open the possible theories on how the story will unfold. Ichigo vs Yhwach was epic, the reveals were beautifully executed, and I'm ready for where this goes. And so if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And if you want a video where I talk about the primordial world in more depth, check out this video right now.